We have to take the priorities that we look at today and agree upon today forward to groups such as the local strategic partnerships and others, so that the priorities that we want and we know for our communities are taken into consideration when it comes to determining where to wield the axe. Now, in all of this, we have to understand that there are inevitably going to be very strong competing interests. I'm pretty sure that our colleagues in the statutory sector right now are under an enormous amount of pressure to bring about cuts and will have their own views about where it's best to realise them. Even between ourselves in the voluntary and community sector, I suspect if we get ourselves in the room together, we'll have very different ideas about what should be given the highest priority in the roll call of services that should be saved. So yes, let's be prepared to clearly articulate our views, but here we also have to listen, we have to compromise, and we have to discuss very carefully to make sure that the interests of our communities are put first. And I think that's going to be a difficult thing for everybody to do over the next few months. But I say this to anybody here that's from the statutory service. I am expecting no less from you over the next 3 months and beyond, and actually you should expect no less from us in the voluntary sector as well. A few weeks ago, along with some other people in this room, I attended the very catchily named Economic and Stronger Community Sounding Board meeting that Val put together in preparation for this meeting. And one of the things that many of us in that meeting seemed to be worried about was whether the cuts would be preceded by proper consultation with the organisations and the communities affected. And whilst we did acknowledge that there were significant pressures being experienced by the public sector authorities, we also said that there should be a really clear expectation of consultation placed upon decision makers who were looking at making cuts. We also debated quite vigorously how the voluntary sector should respond if cuts are made in a way that is either unfair or without due and proper consultation. And certainly we felt that we had opportunities through the campaigning, through the compact, and our natural campaigning instincts to make our voice heard. But as a last resort, we do need to make use of public law challenges where we feel cuts are being made without proper consultation, or, as one of my colleagues at that meeting said, without equalities impact assessments taking place. I think the more we get involved strategically in decision-making relating to cuts, the less likely it will be that we have to resort to such drastic measures. But as a sector, we do need to be aware of those options should we feel the need arises. But you know, to be honest, however hard we work, however hard we campaign, however effectively we influence the progress of cuts over the next few months, the reality is that many of us will experience the cuts firsthand and are going to have to make tough choices in terms of the level of services we can provide and the numbers of people we can employ. I know that as an organisation I'm going to have those conversations and those difficult decisions. And it doesn't help that we're also dealing with it at a time when the sector is still feeling the consequences of the recession in different ways. So I'm sure you'll empathise with the fact that I know that demand for my services at the moment is increasing. I also know that collectively, donations to all of our different causes are decreasing. And again, going back to the NCVO figures I was looking at last night, a third of us have absolutely no cash reserves whatsoever. And that's the stark reality that some of us are going to be dealing with over the next 18 months when we look at the additional impact of public service cuts. Now, we're going to have to find a solution to that. And I think that many of us are going to have no choice other than to work together to provide services and support that we know are needed in our communities. And some of us have been making a positive start. So, for example, with the advice and support of the CVS Community Partnership, I am involved in a group that's looking at whether we can establish consortium to make ourselves more effective when it comes to competing for new contracts that affect our communities. I've been linked in with work that's been led by the Leicestershire Aid Support Services, looking at how we can strengthen organisations to prepare for developing more effective social enterprises. I've also had individual discussions with organisations about how we can work more closely together, whether that's through sharing back office functions to try and achieve greater economies of scale, or whether it's through creating new project ideas that pool our resources and different areas of expertise. And whilst these conversations aren't always easy, I would encourage everybody here today, given the huge number of organisations that are around the room, to find those organisations that you feel have got a common interest with you, a common client group, a common sense of delivering something for your community. Because there's an opportunity here today to establish some partnerships which may not only create some terrific results, but may also, in the long run, help to address some of the funding concerns that you may have. And actually there is a no-brainer at the heart of this, which is that if we're about to enter a time where resources are going to get fewer and fewer, actually we have to start working together to pool those resources to have the impact that we want. So I think it's a prize that's worth a couple of conversations during the course of today. How many people have taken time to read the Coalition's Programme for Government? A few of you. Robert did a really good overview of some of the key things that are in that this morning. But it's worth a read because in addition to the tough and, let's be honest, pretty depressing series of economic policies that we are concerned about today, it includes a range of new ideas and initiatives which may impact positively upon the sector over the next few years. Robert talked about a few of them, from the National Citizen Service through to the development of local work clubs. Now, yes, we can be cynical about it, and I think that some of those things may be very difficult to realise and develop. But actually, it's important for us to say that those things are going to be on the agenda in the city and the county very soon. And we need to be part of the discussion that is leading the development of those initiatives. And I think one of the other things to realise when you look at this document is that particularly when it comes to services that are around creating jobs for people, there's been the emergence here of a new narrative which is around payment by results. And I think it's worth, as an aside, saying that as a sector, we are not particularly great at evidencing the quality and the outcomes of the work we do. Now, I think increasingly over the next few years, a lot of the new opportunities will require us to do that a lot more effectively. And I think it's worth giving a bit of time over the next few weeks and months to developing our own systems for improving the efficacy of our outcome monitoring and reporting. I'm also certain that those organisations that have developed really great community partnerships will be the ones who are best placed over the next few years to capture and take forward the new opportunities that are coming out of government. And I think that's another really important thing to realise when we talk about the importance of partnerships over the next few years. Finally, it's well worth us remembering that 3/4 of all charities receive absolutely no funding from government whatsoever, and that individuals remain the single most important funding stream for the sector, accounting for nearly 37% of our annual income. Now, we know that there are lots of particularly smaller charities, but not exclusively smaller ones, in the city and county who fall into this category. And whilst they may not be worrying in exactly the same way as I am about the impact of public spending cuts on their bottom line, they will be concerned for their communities about the impact that it's going to have on them, and they are going to be responding to the other pressures of the recession, like falling donations and grants and increased demand for their services in other ways. And I want to say quite specifically that even though this feels like it's a very public sector, public funding driven debate, we mustn't ignore the voices of those organisations as we look to put forward a clear argument about where cuts need to fall. 13 years ago, I remember those of us working in the sector really jumped at the chance to make the most of a new government's commitment to working with the voluntary sector, and as a result we were able to bring about some considerable improvements to the lives of some of the most vulnerable people living here in the city and in the county. Now look, in September 2010, the resources are definitely going to be less. But for me, the imperative to work together and get involved remains absolutely the same. You know, we batten down the hatches at our peril again, folks, because for me that's where lies ruin for both organisations and the communities we work with. I have absolutely no doubt that the organisations that will not only survive but succeed and grow over the next 18 months will be the ones who seize the moment, stand up and be counted, and make the commitment to work together to put communities first. And if we can make a start on that today, then folks, I think it will be a day that's been really well spent. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to catching up with all of you at different points during the day, but not in the jacuzzi.